Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and it's another day at Twilight Prepper. Let me just say, here in the darkness, here at about 2:30 a.m., maybe a little less. Some things are kind of going. Here in the darkness, after everything with the sunset and then the sun rises, as we all have our special moments in those days, we look at certain things with the tariffs going on. Basically, you have to tariff something that's an imported good that you can easily, quickly remake. Kind of like tomatoes in the 1890s, coming from Italy, as we could easily grow our own tomatoes. You can't really easily set up a bunch of situations where it's like, no matter what, it's too expensive for us to put aluminum rods in a car. It's too expensive for us to ever polish them, even with machinery. Okay. Been fussing about that with just razor blades in my local area. Since I know that Ontario has actually put commercials in before the tariffs for us to watch on Fox News going, please lobby for us. Please write your representative. We're your best people for rare earth minerals and polishing aluminum rods for a car. For piston turning. It's not really so much rare earth metals all of a sudden. Not really so much of that lithium or cadmium. Nickel's not really a rare earth metal, but it's been put into it to make it look better. Nickel hydride batteries. Mercury, barium, and the others that we're looking at. Antimonum that we're looking at. Those are really some of the more valuable metals that we would be looking at majorly for situations, since they don't want to redo how we make lead bullets in this country and do a 5-step process instead of a 3-step. That would take the actinium out of it. And they're like, oh, we would lose so much of this and so much of that. Not if you follow the right molecular formulas. The old mole formula from high school science. Precise atomic measurements. A pound of it can only weigh so much of this, and the refined metals of it, of each part going in, have to be matching so much of this. Well, anyway, the Democrats are actually working with Trump, believe it or not. While they may stand up on some social issues, all the situations that they are doing, they are running completely on schedule. And to say what that schedule is, right now, totally with everything, is that 100%, well, let's just put it this way. They've been pushing nuclear power in Vermont and Maine and those areas. We've been amassing lots of nuclear material or nuclear fissionable material for decades from Russia. We just stopped buying from them 2 years ago. Generally, they run out of cash at this point. So they became so self-sufficient in their own economy, they don't need outside cash for purchasing outside situations unless it's to upgrade themselves, like the USA was in the 1870s to 1880s, all the way up to the 1930s/40s. Even say that until the end of the 50s a lot. Now, in saying all of that, These same environmental regulations that have been put in that will only have nuclear power in Vermont and the Bernie Sanders crew going, it is the cleanest energy that we can have at this time for the most amount, will be being put in. And we'll have massive amounts of electricity. And the heating oil will probably be removed with all the wood fire stoves. This will make them look better for Europe, who says all of our smog and everything else is transported on the jet stream over into Europe, and we're making them all have to cough and sneeze. This is something that I go on that is, well, there's your own urbanization. The fact that you've deforested your country, continent, and even the seas around it. And we've had to give you the kelp, the trees, and reseed most of it. They still don't even have insects back in certain parts of France because of the last World War. It's amazingly quiet there. You can actually know what true quiet is and truly hear only the trees. They say it's an underground computer that works on gravimetrics. Same thing they say the pyramids shot lightning out of them with. It's just the way that the earth is on it, and makes a faint little noise that scares off all the little critters. So Mussolini could go there and meditate. They actually filmed one of the last Predator or Alien movies there at it. And they go on about how quiet it is. Anyway, going back to the massive nuclear scale situation, which is why we're going to be leaving the treaty, is it's already been planned that this is how Canada would act, and that they would be able to put nuclear power basically across, yes, somewhere in the Erie Great Lakes area to Vermont, to actually make so much electricity, or else on the northern part of Maine that's very interior. You wouldn't believe how much Maine goes into the area, and that they can wire stuff very quickly across the state lines. Even if they put one in Vermont, and then they can say that they sell the power from the state directly to there, even though the national government has to be over the nuclear power, and they can separate before California can, being totally energy independent and sell energy to the rest of the USA. And if New Hampshire and Maine don't go with them, then, well, screw them, or I'll send Green Mountain Boys at you. Already had to listen to Green Mountain Boys. Never saw them. Listened to Mussolini's brag about how they killed them and took their identity 3 or 4 weeks after I got a threat from Burned Out Burn. Actually, it's less than 3 weeks. It was 3 days. Technically, I was like, you're shy about a few hours. Still going with your magic number 3? They're like, yeah, we are a little early. Guess I had to gear up for a whole day. He doesn't realize what it's like around here. Anyway, moving along with how they're going to be making all of these interior nuclear power plants so close to these old silos and trying to buy them back from the USA that sold them to people to live in, and storing a lot of the nuclear stuff inside of them for, later days of refinement, even though they're basically already refined. It's like we're not putting any rockets to them or anything else, but, you have to put them in the containment thing, and in this new bomb housing, it'll make them like a sedentary little giant super battery. So they'll be even producing electricity from that. And then we'll have the eastern seaboard covered, and anything else out there, and possibly laser weapons. Doesn't sound good. And these are supposed to, in all ways, go all the way across to basically interior Spokane, Washington. They talk about how they don't need to be so much to the ocean, and that they will be keeping a certain amount of specialized water and other things in case there is a reaction, so that they can pump immediately 2 or 3 times the amount of that. So I'm just going to have a plankton tank out there with all the stuff rolling around in it and being a self-contained biodome. It's somehow not going to get beaten and have UV lights to make sure everything works right, like an artificial sun in it. And this will just be a holding tank of water over there, and if anything goes wrong, enough for 3 times to 2 times the reactor. And hopefully this thing will never bust. And it'll all be based off of the high school molecular formula, so they know how much is in there and how much each rod is and everything else and so on, like they're supposed to do, as that's the main thing you have to learn for anything over nuclear situations, is the exact precise number of atoms. Now, in all of this is going to create a massive amount of power. And yes, the ones over in Washington and everything else in the interior Washington aren't really probably possible. I mean, Montana through Minneapolis, and yes, and interior Maine to Vermont. Yeah, it could be, but, it's real easy for their version of a Tomahawk or cruise missile to get to that. That's why they're all like, in there closer past Albany and halfway to Buffalo. Just thinking logically. But then, it gets closer if you change the angle. So in that, they're looking at it, and everybody's basically past 3 Mile Island stage. Things have so many redundancies and so many other things with it, and they've had so many other meltdowns in the rest of the world that they believe that this is containable, and that they will just put the thing underneath a giant shield like over at Ukraine with Chernobyl, just in case it ever does. So then, therefore, it doesn't ever happen. Then we'll be going on and possibly selling electricity into Canada, if they ever decide to take it. Now, as far as all of that being said and done with everything, the main reason why over in Washington is the fact of terrorism. And this last set of riots, while you can be like, well, there was all this thing about everything really good, there's really no, and it's revenge over racism, sexism, everything else. And, they found some foreign people that were dicking around the system and caused all of it. Well, that being said, someone went out and they went and burned down a bunch of the Washington apple orchards, took bulldozers to them and ran through them, and just totally obliterated hundreds and hundreds of acres of Washington apple farms, to the point that they basically had to be turned over to be raised for something else, because you left nothing but the nubs there. So it was better to just throw out tree fungus, since all of them were dead and everything else. And they gathered even crop dusters and filled it with Roundup and sprayed the trees. I will be honest, we don't get Washington State apples anymore in the Southeast. We only get New York State apples. And that's where you're supposed to buy things, because all the food comes from there. I'm just saying, there was a lot of conversation with the traveling from Boston area. And while I love a lot of people in Boston with this group of people, and they say that I'm technically related to one person up there, and I'm just like, there's these two knuckleheads he's always trying to apologize for. I'm just going, they must have done that, brought a lot of cred to everything, and they've said recently that yes, they were too hard on the English. They hate me because of my name being too close to something that would be English and not something that was the size of a semi-truck. In this, I'm going, well, Trump's acting as New York is all get out, going, I don't like you all. I don't like British. We all hate the British. And basically, Castle House, it's either Holland, Belgium, or Denmark. And we don't look at anything in the Caribbean right now. And if it goes Democratic, they'll look in the Caribbean, like in the 2-year election. I think that kind of sums up a lot of the tariff stuff, where it's like, well, we need this, and, why the socialization against Canada and stuff and Greenland. And I'm going, yeah, the O'Shea's thing, since I'm going, they're bleeding us dry with all these scams through the O'Shea's churches and the various other scams they have, legal lawsuits and frivolous lawsuits and other stuff like that, sending it back over and everything. And, always saying that they still need more money from the stock market and are always trying to crash it or something else. That's why I'm like, they just don't mess with the commodities market. That's another one. And the commodities market is now gone from the USA, per the wants of certain individuals over in, believe it or not, someone we're actually very allied with. And I happen to be supposedly, allegedly related to by word of mouth, their own confession to me, and government people putting us together. Anyway, in saying that, I'm not going to say much about what's being protested in New York, simply because I'm going, there's enough with them saying we just need to cripple ourselves, because they believe that as a prime minister, they are the complete ruling super telepath, and all nations are their judgeship underneath them that ever existed before they got out of wherever. And in saving them, we were naturally working for them, something like Roman culture. And we will accept their judgment on us and restructure us for the inevitable situation of us underneath them. This does come up to a situation similar to like with Great Britain, France, and the others that we have had a situation with. And while I'm just like, yeah, this one late night comedian lobbies for that completely, and his situation has finally came up, and it's like, what else do you have to do over here other than destroy American farmland with housing? And it's the only way that you all can have a market, because it's the only thing that we ever know about, because we only watched Native American pioneer movies to know about the USA. And that's all we know about the USA. And they refuse to know anything about the USA. And it's whatever your local politicians will say now, because we know that no one ever existed outside of the little Polish reservation, unless they came back with special documentational work visas to special places, like was in the Civil War, and they took those foreigners and removed them and sent them back home. It's getting to look a lot like some people more like agents with Rome, and then going, well, we'll have side deals with you, and we won't ever abandon you and keep you all good, kind of like Ehud's doing with Ehud Barak, with the Soviet Union currently right now, because all those who survived in Ukraine are not supposed to be there because they didn't stay on Poland and do like they were told by the people who claim Egypt as just their Masonic test ground. Anyway, I'm sure I'm going to get the anti-Semitic thing to me here with everything else, and am really just trying to keep my mouth shut. Let's put it that way. Not wanting to say too much here, because I do live in an area that I do know people can be disappeared. Whole towns, 1 million strong, in the interior and the surrounding towns can all be disappeared because they can pay taxes better. And we'll have a grand old little riotous civil war over it. And they'll be gone, and the others are inconsequential. And you can just breed them to being us. And that's what you all do. And there's no way there's this much variance with you all. It's a quote from a president. Twilight Prepper, over and out.